So, welcome everybody. We are today. We last time we talked about the how to bring the Ten Commandments down to earth. Remember, and we spoke about the Ten Commandments when we were in Jerusalem. That was a nice place to speak about it from the Western Wall. And then when we came back, we talked about how now that the Ten Commandments are given, which is really 10 sayings or 10 utterances, they are chapter headings, and all the 613 commandments are derived from those 10 utterances. So don't steal. So we have many examples of what stealing might be, honoring your parents, what that might be. So we are bringing heaven to earth, and that's how we're supposed to live, and the whole purpose of that. It mainly is establishing the justice system, because for God to dwell among us, to come from heaven to earth, is the best environment is justice. So if we are an unjust society, God does not want to dwell among us. So the structure that we need to create, the tent of meeting that we will be now starting to approach, is a system of, it's called the tent of meeting, meeting each other and meeting God. So that those two sides are reflected in the two tablets, one between people and the other between God and man. So we need both tablets to be a complete society, so it reflects heaven. If we neglect, let's say we're very pious with God, but we don't really care about each other, we're missing it. And actually, the Talmud says that the first temple was destroyed because of that, because they were too pious. They were arguing about every little thing in the law, but forgetting the people's life in it. So, and the second temple was destroyed because of animosity between people. So we see that you have to have both sides of the tablets to establish a right and righteous society. So how it translates into little things in life, things that we think to ourselves, this is heaven, that I have to wash the dishes now, or I have to take the garbage out. This is how I bring heaven to earth. Yes. The answer is yes. The smaller the task, the more potential for heaven there is in it. So when we clean our house, we are cleaning not just the environment, we're cleaning our mind. We are creating sanctuaries all the time. That's really the point. In every task in life, how we are creating a sanctuary for God to be able to dwell with us.
Yeah, one thing I'd just add to think about it is that God is perfection, God is order, truth, justice, all the good, every good virtue is in God. And when He created the earth, He did created creation. It is separate, and it's fragile. It's not infinite. It's fragile. So God is building His kingdom within the earth, within the creation. He wants to unite, but only He is infinite, and we're growing in that relationship with God that brings us, as I preach today, the Eastern Orthodox Christians actually call it divinization. Catholic tradition says sanctification, and bringing God to earth, and so that we would say God became man part of creation, as Jews might say, to be within the world through his law. But then now we take on divinity, we take on sanctification as we try to bring order and beauty into the world.
So, chapter 23 in Exodus, that's what we're going to start today, um, is really establishing the justice system and the little things that we encounter in life and how we should deal with them. So it says, "Do not accept a false report." Right? I mean, the first thing in court that we're asked to do is to swear that we're only going to say the truth and only nothing but the truth. Do not extend your hand with the wicked to be a venal witness. So a false witness, it's definitely one of the Ten Commandments. So it's a big one. Do not be a follower of the majority for evil. This is one of the basic things because what we see is that if you remember last time we talked about the Hebrew slave and how the first thing that we're supposed to think about is how we're free. And the first example of freedom is to be different in opinion, right? To have a different opinion. So that this is an indication of living in a free and just society when you don't have to go after the majority. And actually, Abraham started the whole journey by removing himself from the majority. It says that he's called Abraham the Hebrew. The word Hebrew in Hebrew is on the other side. So the whole world was idol worshipers, and he decided that he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't want it anymore. And he left and he stood on the other side. But before he left, they wanted to kill him. The Midrash says, like in the book of Daniel, they threw Abraham into the fiery furnace, but he survived, just like Daniel and his cohort. He was so righteous that God saved him from it. But after he came out, he didn't want to tempt his faith, and he left with the family. So he stood on the other side of the world. So this is also, again, is a very big commandment. Do not be a follower of the majority for evil, and do not respond to a grievance by yielding to the majority to prevent the law. Okay, it's very easy to be with everybody and be popular, but we need to be faithful and stand for justice. Do not glorify a destitute person in his grievance. If you encounter so also this is in court. So don't prefer on the other side someone who just because they are poor or destitute, but if they committed a crime, don't kind of give him the way out just because he or she is poor. Now it goes into again another aspect of relationship between neighbors and people we live with in the community. If you encounter an ox of your enemy or his donkey wandering, you shall return it to him repeatedly. So it's interesting. I mean, this one sentence tells us several things. One is that you have to return a lost item to somebody. The second is that even if it's your enemy, right, it's easy to bring back the donkey to your nice neighbor, but not somebody who you see as an enemy. So in one sense, in the New Testament, right, when Jesus says, "Love your enemy," these are the verses that he relies on. So, or you see the donkey wandering. You shall return to him repeatedly. So every time. So we are not supposed to do these accountings, like when I should do. He's a good person, not a good person. We have to do the commandment, to perform the commandment on our end. We see a lost item, we give it back to whomever it belongs to. Then it says, if you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? Okay, so this is another example of how you help even people who you dislike. You shall help repeatedly with him. Do not prevent the judgment of your destitute person in his grievance. So this is the other side of it. In court, don't prefer the wealthy person in the community or the more powerful, well known. So you have to be this. This is where Lady Justice is blind, where it comes from. For I shall not exonerate the wicked. So this is another interesting thing, that it says that even though we say that God, the revenge is for God, not for us. So even if your justice system is not perfectly just, God is telling us, I will not exonerate the wicked. People will get what they deserve, one way or another. Do not accept bribe, of course, right? So you can see how each of these commandments are linked to one of the big heading, one of the big utterances. So don't accept bribe. It could be don't steal. For the bribe will blind those who see the corrupt words that are just. So, or in other actually explanation, it blinds the eyes of the righteous. So imagine what bribe would do to someone who is not a righteous person. So be careful of bribe. Do not oppress the stranger. Okay, so this is incredible. The Torah is replete with examples and times that it tells us about the stranger, because the stranger is our opportunity to really have our faith in God. We don't know who they are, but if they're hungry, we need to feed them. If they're naked, we need to clothe them. Without doing these calculations of how I'm going to be benefiting from it. God sees everything. And this is the most frequent example in the Torah. When we talk about Shabbat. So Shabbat is mentioned several times to keep the Sabbath. But being just with the poor and the stranger is the most frequent commandment that repeats itself in terms of verses. The feelings of a stranger. Why? Because you were a stranger in the land of Egypt. So the whole point of starting in Egypt was to put us in a spiritual place that would be embedded in us that it's like we bless when the Jewish people, the blessing after the grace after meal, we thank God for marking the covenant in our flesh. So the simple understanding is, of course, the covenant, the bris, the circumcision. But that's not the full story, because there are other ways. What about women? Women, of course, the covenant is in their flesh in a different way. that it is something that is part of us. We can't run away from. So the Egypt experience was the forming experience. It was like a womb that we came out of. So we started our way through the Egyptian slavery, which means that this is another covenant that now that we see someone who is a stranger, we have to remember that we were a stranger. We don't even have to remember. It is imprinted in us. And then it says, 6 years shall you sow your land and gather its produce, and in the seventh you shall leave it unattended and unharvested. Okay, think of how hard this would be. When we talk about the Sabbath day, every seventh day, it's a practice. What is it a practice of? It's a practice of letting go and let God. To know that we don't control everything. And that really is the supposed to be the best feeling of freedom. The opposite of restricting. Some people think that the Sabbath is a restricting experience because there are things you can't do. But once you understand what it's about and you feel it, it's not just about understanding it intellectually. It really is about experiencing the Sabbath to when sundown comes on Friday night, or for you Saturday night, to cease from things. Say, okay, for the next 25 hours, I can't read emails. I can't go shopping. I can't do certain things, light fire, and that's in the Jewish example.
So this is what we call the Shemitah. It was as there is a calendar, you have the week, 7-day creation. God rests on the seventh day. Now, with the 7-year period, it's going to be the same kind of pattern that after 6 years of working, God, that the trust was there that God would give a double portion so that that you can rest. Imagine this is what we call the sabbatical year. And so teachers, the last place I guess they have it, and I did take one sabbatical at one point, but that was after 20 years. But imagine having 6 years to produce and work and toil and all the rest. And then as a nation, Israel was supposed to have the seventh year, a whole year to rest, recoup, study, pray, and rejuvenate for the next period of time. Then there was a Jubilee year. So look at the sevens are all over the place. So 7 days in the week, 7 days, 7 years in the Shemitah, and then after 7 years times seven, the cycle then also would give a Jubilee year, and that would be the 50th year. So it's fascinating. Imagine that everybody would have a double portion, probably at least once in your life, given that people live usually past 50. So you will have a double portion at some point.
Yeah, so that's amazing. I mean, a Jubilee is an amazing experience because it's 2 years that you have to rest and not work your land, but also all the lands return to their original owners and all the debts are forgiven. It's an amazing social equalizer, as we say. We never are equal. So the justice system tries to make things as equal as possible. So the Sabbath, when everybody rests, it's an equalizer during the week. But that's why we have to practice it. Because if you don't practice the weekly Sabbath, when it comes to the seventh year and you have to let your land lay fallow, you're not going to do that because you have not practiced your faith to let go.
Well, just one thing now too, I like to point this out. It's amazing, According to the rabbis, we don't know exactly when the Jubilee is supposed to be, but it's a 50-year cycle for sure. And one thing that I found interesting as learn more about the history of modern Israel, the first big event it was the Balfour Declaration, which gave Israel Jews the right to own land, and that was in 1917. So 50 years later, remarkably, was 1967. And what happened that year? Wow. The Jews are back in Jerusalem. And then 50 years later, in 2017, the world began to recognize, the United States did, that Jerusalem
Capital.
the capital of Israel. So it's interesting that there's this cycle of 50 years.
Mm.
What does that mean? I just was struck by it, looking at how some
Yeah.
people now have interpreted that as the whole idea of the Jubilee was to return the land to its owner, to its previous owner, to equalize everything. And so interesting idea.
No, that's very profound because since the destruction of the temple, the second temple, the Jewish people have not been counting the 50th year. We only do the Shemitah, that we do, but we go from the seventh year cycle, and we don't stop for the 50th. And because we're not, Jubilees symbolizes, of course, great happiness. And since the temple is still destroyed, we can't be that happy. So we don't count the Jubilee. So we kind of lost the counting. That's what Father Roy was referring to. But maybe if we then take that as a sign that these are the years of the Jubilee, that's very, very interesting. Okay, so then, so this whole thing about the 6 days shall you accomplish your activities, and on the seventh day you shall desist, so that the ox and the donkey may be content, and your maidservant son and the sojourner may be refreshed. See, this is it's in the text. It's not even interpretation. You have to refresh, you have to rest. And that really, Shabbat is the pivot between the house of slavery that we came from and the house of freedom that we're going to now build for God. Because that is when you say, I am a free person. I'm able to stop my work. The difference between a slave and a free person is that a slave is not in charge of his or her schedule. And usually when you own slaves, we see that everywhere. That's why it's the idea of slavery that you never stop. They'll try to kind of squeeze the lemon all the way. So they treat you as property, not as a human being. So it happens all the time. So we say to ourselves and to the world and to God, we now are our trajectory is going to be towards freedom. And those seventh day iterations are where we practice our freedom.
Now, one of the things we as Christians have really lost is the idea of Shabbat for sure, that Sunday is now, just another day of the week, and how in decades ago it's been recent in the whole country history, but Sunday was that good day that a lot of stores would close and shut down. People generally had Sundays off.
The blue laws.
And the blue laws and all the rest, and we gave that up, and now the many families, I've heard stories of the past where a Sunday was everybody went to grandma's house for dinner, and after church or whatever they would have this great meal, and people would hang out not for 20 minutes to eat, but to spend the afternoon or the evening and have rest and you know, enhance the relationships. I'm sure, of course, there were fights in the midst of it too, sometimes, I guess,
No.
but no, never. But so, but the idea of doing that is really amazing to me now too, after not practicing that. I see the loss in our society and our culture that we don't know our cousins like we used to, and so it really was and we had some of that back when I was still growing up, younger days. We certainly would have a dinner maybe once a month we get with our relatives.
Yeah, so it says and God, and it doesn't happen a lot in the Bible that God says, be careful. And that's the next verse. God says, be careful regarding everything I have said to you. These are the basic elements of free and just society. And if you're following our book, we're on page 436. And then it's Exodus 23, verse 13. And it says, and the name of God of the other gods you shall not mention, nor shall your mouth cause it to be heard. Again, these are kind of iterations of how to fulfill the Ten Commandments. Of course, I am your God, you shall not have other gods. 3 pilgrimage festivals shall you celebrate for me during the year. You shall observe the festival of Matzot. That's of course, Passover. 7 days shall you eat matzot, as I have commanded you at the appointed time of the month. So 3 pilgrimages, of course, Passover, Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths, Sukkot. So these are the 3 times you should go to Jerusalem, or it doesn't say here Jerusalem, it says where my temple will be, or where the Shekhinah will be. Um, but of course, the Passover is the holiday of Matzot, that we eat the matzah, and the festival of the harvest, that the first in the 7 weeks after Passover. So that's Pentecost. It's the Jewish, and then of course, uh, for you, it's the 50 days after Easter. Um,
So just to know, again, we are in Lent for the Christians. We're in this cycle again, 40 days of Lent and 50 days of Easter. So we're heading toward that. See the biblical roots here now of how they coincide and what do you call it, like interact with each other. This feast that's coming up. And by the way, on this year, Passover is celebrated on Wednesday of Holy Week. So we are going to have a real Seder. We've been calling it a model Seder because it's always on a different day, not exactly on Passover. But this year it seems we can do it on Wednesday of Holy Week and celebrate with our Jewish brothers and sisters on this very day. So we're not going to call it a model Seder. We're going to call it the Seder. And we'll have it at St. Mark's where we meet usually. Please God, it doesn't snow.
well, it's April 1st.
It's April, it doesn't matter. We did when I was a kid. We had the first Christmas I remember not being white, and then we had snow on Easter.
Huh.
So you never know.
Yeah,
You never know.
White Easter. But maybe because we had very white Christmas here.
Yeah.
It will
So
be
anyway,
very springy.
it's April 1st, right?
Yeah, Wednesday, April
Wednesday,
1st.
April 1st, and we'll figure out the time, and you'll be invited, of course. And it'll be a full dinner, so we are going to have to, do tickets and all the rest.
So the second one is 50 on the 50th. So you see the breath. There's a cycle of breath here. It's the spiritual cycle of the spiritual breath is the cycle of 7. So every seventh day, then every seventh year, And then between Passover and the harvest, the first harvest and the second harvest, is 7 weeks or beginning of the spring. And then the first harvest is the Shavuot, 7 weeks. So seven of seven. And then the 50th day, it's kind of a mini Jubilee, is the Pentecost, or what we say as the receiving of the Torah. So it's climbing up to a climactic event of receiving the Torah.
So the timing is very interesting for what happened in the Jewish calendar. Remember, at the time of Jesus, most Jews did not live in Israel. Most were else in the diaspora. So many were in Egypt and various places, and they spoke Greek. So this is where we actually get the word Pentecost. The Greek-speaking Jews called it Pentecost since it was 49 days and then the 50th. So Penta, meaning 5 sets of 10. So you get to that 50 number. So we just adapted that name. We as Christians call it Pentecost because that's when the Holy Spirit came upon the apostles at Pentecost. So the fulfillment of those 50 days, we took that and we used the same name. So in Greek, so it's a Greek word. The Greeks still use it. We say Pentecost, and it's actually Shavuot, right?
Yeah, Shavuot means weeks. The 7 weeks. So here it's described as the first harvest of the first fruit. And then the third pilgrimage holiday is and the festival of the ingathering at the close of the year. So that's Sukkot, the feast of booths, but it also is the ingathering, the second harvest, and at the end of the summer. So they have one in the beginning of the summer and then one at the end of the summer, but it's also the end of the year. And you might ask yourself, wait, but it's actually around the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is in September, and then Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot. But actually, they close the ritualistic year because the ritual year actually starts on Passover. So we have 6 months of ritual year and 6 months that nothing happens because it's like night and day. We work the land, we work when it's light out, so it's spring and summer, and then fall and winter we don't have those holidays. We've added a few holidays later on, but they're not from the Torah. Like Purim is in the book of Esther, and then you have this is coming up now. That's before Passover, and then we have Hanukkah that is in December usually. So, but these are later on events that we commemorate. So on those days that are not prescribed from the Torah, we can still work. That's how you know if it's a prescribed holiday in the Torah or an event that became a holiday later on. So we closed the year, and just so you're not leaving here confused, why is the Rosh Hashanah? Because Rosh means head, and it's the beginning of the year. Why is it at the end of the year? So there are 4 times of Rosh Hashanah on the Jewish calendar. It's pretty much every season is a Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year for something. So the Passover is the beginning of the year for the Jewish calendar. And actually, the first month, when the Torah refers to the first month, it's actually the month of Passover, the month of Nisan. So we're coming up with that. And then Rosh Hashanah that we celebrate in September is usually for the taxes. So it actually ends the year, but it begins the year for taxes. But it also commemorates the beginning of the world, when God created the world. So it's more of a universal holiday versus a particular holiday of the Jewish people. So the ingathering at the end of the year refers to ingathering of the harvest, of the people, and really the nations. Okay, and then it says that you shall not offer the blood of my feast offering upon leavened bread. So it's telling us about the matzah, nor may fat or my festive offering remain overnight until morning. The choicest first fruit of your land you shall bring to the house of God of Hashem, of the Lord your God. You shall not cook a kid in the milk of its mother. I'm sure you've heard that before. Um, Many commandments came out of this, many halachot, rules. Um, One big one is that the rabbis interpreted this as not mixing meat and milk and dairy. Yeah, meat and dairy. So the kid and the milk. Um, Others see it as actually more of a ethical a commandment, not to offer the kid or the young lamb while it's still nursing. You have to let that lamb finish nursing, and only then you can take the kid from his mother, really, because it's so painful. That separation of the mother and the lamb, it's terrible. So it's telling us here, and actually the second interpretation is kind of makes more sense here, even though, of course, we separate milk and dairy, meat and yeah, and dairy. But the second interpretation of this, that it's an ethical commandment not to separate the kid from his mother, makes more sense because of its location. It's we are told twice in the Torah not to take the kid in its mother's milk, and the it's both times it appears in the context of the offerings, what to bring to the house of God, and not in the context of listing the kosher food. So that is why it makes more sense that this is what it means. And some people I know that this is how they observe this commandment. They don't necessarily see it as the separation of meat and dairy. Okay, and then it says, "Behold, I send an angel before you to protect you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have made ready." So this is incredible. We don't think about it that God already wrote chapter 2 before we had chapter 1. So God already knows where this is going. He already prepared the place for us to be. Because we're still in Mount Sinai here. We're still in the desert. But God already prepared a place for us, which is, of course, the Holy Land, the Promised Land. But it teaches us an important lesson. It teaches us that we have to think ahead of time in life, and also when we create something, we have to know where we're going to place it. So I can give you many examples of this. So if you are going to bring children to the world, right, you want to prepare a home for them before they are born. The traditional ritual in Judaism is for the husband after the betrothal to take a year, up to a year, take up to a year to that the husband and wife cannot be together because they're not husband and wife yet. They're engaged, but they can't be with other people. And the husband uses that time to prepare a home for them. And only when he has the home ready, then they can get married, and he brings the wife into his house. So there are many examples. When Moses went up to the mountain to get the tablets, right? He gets the tablets, but there's a place that God already tells us to prepare while he's on the mountain to prepare the Ark of the Covenant. So when he brings the tablets, there are a place to be. This idea, and I'll kind of give you an overall context to all these examples, is, as we said, we are bringing heaven to earth. Our soul is heavenly. God prepared its body, the goof, the container, before he injected the breath in it. And this is the same example. Because we live heavenly, supposed to live heavenly life on earth, the soul or the heavenly life cannot just be out in the open or without the respectful container or clothing to be in here. Because we need to prepare heavenly accommodation on earth for the heavenly soul. And I always like to give the example of, let's say, the president, prime minister, big celebrities, before they go and stay at a hotel, they call in first and prepare their needs, right? The president needs security, needs room for the entourage, needs all kinds of things. Same idea. We need to feel comfortable in our place. So our soul, our heavenly life, has to feel that there's a heavenly accommodation, even though it's on earth. Okay?
Now, you just mentioned this whole idea of what happens with the husband and the wife in the Jewish marriage ritual. I like to connect to the story of Jesus. Now, it says in the scripture that Mary and Joseph were betrothed when she was found with child. So betrothal is not like engagement today. Betrothal means you, under the law, you are married and bound to each other. But the groom did not be with the wife yet, the bride. He would go away and build a house. So it's interesting, one way to look at what's happening in the Christian idea here. The first coming of Christ was the betrothal. Okay, that he has married the church. But where did he go? The very words of Jesus. They ask him, "Where are you going?" "I am going away to prepare a place for you, so that when I return, I will take you to myself." So it's amazing parallel about the first coming of Christ is kind of like the Jewish betrothal, that Jesus has married his bride, the church. He's gone away to prepare a place. And then we could see the second coming of Christ as the consummation of the marriage. And then he takes us to his home. So it's a beautiful parallel there. It's wonderful to
and it is the same here as the idea of marriage, that God married the Israelite or the Israel nation here, and so he prepares a home for them already. There's a home ready. So of course later on we see that we kind of rejected it. And when the spies go to Israel to see it, or the promised land, and they come back with a bad report, and that, imagine, it's like someone who gives you your present, the of not just engagement, the marriage, and then you reject it. So of course that's very hurtful. And then it says, beware of him, hearken to his voice, do not rebel against him, for he will not forgive your willful sin, for my name is within him. Okay? So the you have to when the angel that goes in before you to show you the way, don't go against that angel. And a lot of times we don't see this angel that God has in front of us and leads us, and all the signs that God shows us, and we go against those signs. So that's how God speaks to us. Angels in Hebrew is a messenger. So it can be anybody, really. I mean, here, of course, it's the angel with it could be the pillar of fire or the cloud, but if we take it to our lives, it means that God has messengers all the time, and they show us the way one way or another. It doesn't always have to be a nice angel or a nice messenger. Somebody gives us slaps us in the face. Well, maybe it means that God wants us to wake up. So we shouldn't ignore God's angel or messages and messengers. If you will hearken to his voice and carry out all that I shall speak, then I shall be the enemy of your enemies. Okay, and persecute your persecutors. For my angel shall go before you and bring you to the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Jebusite, and I will annihilate them. So all these obstacles, again, we don't have to take this. Yes, there were these nations that lived there, and they were an obstacle. They were not friendly to the Israelite, and God will fight your wars. But if you go against that angel, you will have to fight your own wars. That's always the kind of the structure. If you look at the signs that God shows you, and the Talmud tells us who is a wise person. A wise person is someone whose eyes are in his head, which means someone who can see. That's right in front of you. Why don't you see it? So if you see it, good. Your journey is going to be smoother. But if not, you're going to have to do it yourself, just like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Everything was given to them, it was all provided. They didn't have to toil the land, but because they had to be removed, but they went against God, against his commandment. They had to then start feeding themselves. And then it tells us, do not prostrate yourself to their gods, do not worship them, do not act according to their practices. Rather, you shall tear them apart and you shall smash their pillars. You shall worship the Lord your God, and he shall bless your bread and your waters, and I shall remove illness from your midst. Wow. That's a big promise that if we adhere to God, and again, it's how do we adhere to God? How do we see those signs? How do we know that these are the signs from God and not from what we call the other side? These are, of course, you have to discern these things. And that's why God is telling us that we have to listen to our teachers. We have to listen to those who come before us. And then it says, there shall not be a woman who loses her young or it is infertile in your land. I shall fill the number of your days. I shall send my fear before you, and I shall confound the entire people among whom you shall come. And I shall make all your enemies turn the back of the neck to you, meaning they'll surrender. So, what God is saying here, if you are close to me, I am the tree of life. Remember, when Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden, what started their death was their now separation from the tree of life, that regeneration. So God is telling us, I'm your tree of life. And the Torah is called the tree of life. All the rules and laws that I'm giving you, you are now outside the Garden of Eden. But I actually, the Kabbalah tells us, the Jewish mysticism says that God hid the Garden of Eden, the entrance to the Garden of Eden, back in the Torah, in the words of the Torah. So if we follow the words of the Torah, we find our way back into the gate of the gate of heaven, or the gate of the Garden of Eden. Okay, so you will there will be no miscarriage, no illness. You will live to 120 like Moses. Everything will be filled with life. There will be no death or sickness. And then it says, I shall send the hornet swarm before you, and it will drive away the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite before you. What God is telling us here, because we're starting this tango with God, this dance of faith. And what God is telling us, don't ever underestimate what I can do for you. Even if you don't see a way, what I can do is I can send the hornet before you, meaning you may not be able to enter or to go through the secure walls of your enemies, but I can send the hornet through the keyhole, and it'll bite them and kill them this way. So it's just another example, an analogy to what God, how God has His reach beyond what we can even imagine. And then, little by little, shall I drive them away from you, until you become fruitful and make the land your heritage. I shall set your border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness until the river. For I shall deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hands, and you shall drive them away before you. Now, this is a big statement here too, that the Jewish people have suffered, because of this sentence a lot, this verse, because it tells us the borders of the promised land, and of course the river is the Euphrates. So it's really a majority of the Middle East should be really Israel, and we refer to it as the whole land of Israel. So the it's not the state of Israel with its borders, the political borders that we have today. It's the whole, the complete land of Israel, whether sovereign or not sovereign, but this is the borders of the land. And God actually, and the rabbis warn us already in as an interpretation from the first verse of Genesis, when it says God created the world, and in the beginning God created the world, heaven and earth. Rashi, one of the interpreters, telling us that one day or all the time, people will ask you, what right do you have to this land? Why did you push out those people? And people ask us this until this day. Just yesterday, I saw the interview of Tucker Carlson with Huckabee. He went to Israel to interview Huckabee, and somehow Tucker Carlson seemed to be now challenging Israel on the same thing. Why do you say these are the borders of your land? Why are you the ancient Jews? Maybe you're not the same Israelites that came out of Egypt. So the bottom line is that we're always going to be challenged about these things, those borders. But God is telling us those borders are going to be secure, not because you will have a strong army. Nowhere does it say that. It says that it will be secure when you are in you fulfilling my words and my commandment. Then I'll trust me, I will take care of that. And if you look at even the modern history of the modern state of Israel, I mean, the 6 Day War, there's no way that Israel should have won against all the armies coming against it. So there's very interesting in the military school in America. What's the name of the school?
Which one? The
Yeah,
Army or something?
yeah,
West Point?
the West Point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I heard um, one of the some of the people talk about this thing that happened at West Point, where they were not teaching the 6 Day War. And so the question was why they asked one of the generals there, why are you not teaching the 6 Day War? And they said, because we're not here in teaching miracles. We're teaching wars, not miracles. So the 6 Day War is really in the category of a miracle. And of course, then the Yom Kippur War and all these times that God kind of protects the Jewish people. Even October 7th, by the way. I don't know if you know that, but that was supposed to be the an attack from Hezbollah in the north, at the same time. But Hamas decided to go first before the coordinated date, and even though they killed so many people and murdered and did a lot of damage, the damage could have been a lot worse. So that's what God is telling us. You have to begin that trust in me. And how do I see that you trust me? Is when you return your enemy's donkey, when you don't cheat and court, when you do these things with your neighbors that show me that you are a believing community. Okay. And then finally it says, they shall not dwell in your land, and they cause you to sin against me, that you will worship their God, and it will be a trap for you. So we'll stop the text here. But so this is chapter 23, what we just covered. These nations that will not be in your land are not going to be there, because if they will be there, you will follow you'll be tempted to follow their gods. And what we did see eventually in the time of Joshua, that actually there were nations that still remained. Joshua did not conquer the whole land, and the Philistines and the Gaza area actually remained there. And so what God is telling us here has not been fulfilled yet completely. So again, the commandment is not to annihilate anybody who is friendly and wants to live in peace, but those who will oppose you, those who will attack you. Um, one of the parts of the conversation between Tucker Carlson and Huckabee was that Tucker Carlson said to Huckabee, "How do you feel with the fact that Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, he referred to Hamas as the Amalekite, like the Amalekite." Now, if I were there, I would have explained that better because what Huckabee said was, um, is they attacked and Israel had to retaliate but what Tucker Carlson meant to challenge that the Amalekites were supposed to be annihilated altogether, and King Saul loses his kingship when he leaves the king and the animals in the time of Samuel. So he was saying, so is that the point that now Israel will annihilate the Palestinians in Gaza and leave no trace? Um, what I would answer to that, yes, they are compared to the Amalekite in the sense that they attacked Israel from the back, and those who were not prepared, the civilians, they didn't fight with the army. They came to people's homes. And the Amalekites attacked Israel right after they left the land. We haven't gotten there yet, but that'll be next. So they attacked the weak and the strugglers and the stragglers. Yes, that is the Amalekite. We don't know who the Amalekites are today, but what we need to annihilate is the Amalekite attitude of the Amalekite force. So that absolutely. So whoever participated in the massacre of October 7th and whoever has the same intention of doing that, yes, absolutely. They are compared to the Amalekite that need to disappear. We're not necessarily talking about the kids, the children, the animals, because we don't know who the Amalekite as a nation, but we know who the Amalekite as a force that goes against the people of Israel and really against the will of God. It's a cynical way of looking at life. The Amalekite did not have a real agenda. Their agenda, like in the serpent in the Garden of Eden, was to sabotage the people of God. And that is what we call the other side, what you would call, I guess, the Antichrist. Um, it's that force that when we try to be closer to God, it does everything possible to remove us from God.